Three, two, one.
Action.
Welcome everybody. This is Uncle Frank and Nick here with Untitled ZX, our podcast about movies. So
It's some
we
easy.
we have a packed agenda today here. So we have three
Remember?
movie reviews we're gonna do. That's the most we've ever done at one time, and then we're gonna do some Star Wars time. We'll talk about first episodes of Maul. So
Yep.
let's then. Well, first of all, how was your weekend?
Uh,
Easter. What'd you do?
um, well, it's been a very tiresome weekend on the pretense that I only half finished the notes for this episode 5 minutes ago. So
Yeah, you were busy.
quite,
Did you have Easter egg hunts?
um, maybe kind of.
You had one, I know of,
Yeah, that
and
was a.
you struggled to find the golden egg, from what
I
I
did.
recall.
From what you recall, you're the one who hit it, so
That's right, I did hide it.
you didn't
I got
remember
you.
where you hit it. You kept miscounting, but it's fine. We get $20 out of it. It's enough to pay for gas this week, I guess. Half a
There
tank.
you go.
That's
All
gas for the
right.
week.
Well, glad you got to participate in the egg hunt. So, but let's jump in. First movie review is War Machine. What is this movie about? Tell me about it.
So this is a Netflix sci-fi movie, except it's only kind of sci-fi. More than anything, it's just kind of generic military propaganda action movie. It wasn't very good. We're just gonna get that out of the window. It's not very interesting.
You did give it a bad rating.
I did, in fact, give it a bad rating. We're gonna get
This,
quite a
what
bit
is
of.
your rating?
I gave it a very generous 5 out of 10, and that's mostly just because Alan Ritchson is a fairly likable person.
That's your worst movie review we've had.
It's not the only 5 out of 10 I'm giving today. I'll just say that.
Okay. So
Um,
it's bad week for movies, I guess. But what made it bad?
I feel like it wants you to get invested in these characters, and it tries to spend time with these characters, and yet more often than not, they come off less as characters and more so as cliches, the sort of stereotypes you see in like a military movie. It's very just like, oh yeah, join the military. It's very like gung-ho, like generic military stuff.
Don't you think this is the issue with all the Netflix movies?
Yeah, this is pretty
Half of the Netflix movies I watch, I'm just like, you know, someone put it
generic.
together, but they didn't spend very much time on the plot, and they didn't spend much time on the script.
Yeah, most of the characters feel like aggressively cliche, and it's like, okay, I've seen this happen a million times before. This is not interesting or memorable, like at all.
Was the action any good or not even the action?
Not really. There were a couple fight sequences because the whole premise is that like there's these army rangers on their like final test, but their test goes horribly wrong when they attack the wrong target, but they find out that it's not actually part of their mission, but instead it's this robot alien thing from space. We don't actually figure out what it is because the movie ends with the cliffhanger of the aliens coming to Earth, and they're all like gung
Oh,
ho, join the army. The army rangers are great.
nothing worse than when you put a bad movie and then have a cliffhanger. Damn, a bad movie.
Like,
You're like,
yeah,
dude, I just spent 2 hours watching this. You couldn't give me an ending at least?
I'm not even going to continue this because the whole thing is like they beat the one giant robot alien, the entire team dies, and
No.
then it's like they just, except for the one guy, and he's like, gung ho, the army rangers, we're strong, haha. And we're just like, bro, the world's getting invaded. Don't you have better things to do?
So your advice is, unless you have nothing else better to do, don't watch this movie.
Yeah, give or take. It's not even like the most like horrendously or like offensively terrible movie I've ever seen. It just
Mhm.
sort of falls into the category of I've seen this, we've been there, done that. This is not a movie that's frankly even worth discussing all that much. It's very just basic. It's generic. It's you've seen this
Okay.
movie 100 times before and probably way better than this.
Then let's move on
Yeah,
because
let's.
I'm much more interested in your next movie review, which is a movie that I have seen multiple times because it's not a new movie,
No,
The
it is
Devil
not.
Wears Prada.
We're playing the catch-up game on the pretense that the sequel comes out in less than a month, but
That's right. It does come out. This has got Anne Hathaway in it. Who else?
Meryl Streep,
Yeah, a whole bunch of famous people.
Emily Blunt, Stanley Tucci,
Yep.
pretty solid cast. Emily Blunt was pretty new when this came out. This was one of her earlier roles.
Anne Hathaway was pretty new when this came out.
Yeah, but she'd been in a little bit more. Emily Blunt, this was like her first actual like big-ish role.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
the fact
And
that they're Jewish,
so, what did you
I
think?
before we say anything, I'm kind of just baffled that they're doing a sequel because everything I'm seeing in the trailers for the sequel sounds like, why are these characters even interact? Like these are characters who, due to the events of this story, should probably never interact again.
You know why they're doing a sequel,
Money.
of course.
But I'm not talking about it from a money standpoint because thinking of things that way is incredibly boring and generic, and I don't like thinking about things that way.
I gotcha.
Think
Well, I'm
about things.
sure I'm sure there are things they can do with these. They are good characters. Well, tell me what you thought of this movie.
It's kind of interesting. I thought it was fairly good, although I had some gripes, particularly with the direction. I do not know what was going on with the camera half the time. Felt less like they were shooting it like a movie and more like they were shooting it akin to something like those random like intro like collage videos they do at the beginning of like a news TV presentation on like your local news network.
Okay,
Like it wasn't the most interesting from a cinematography standpoint.
gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
okay, I've seen college kids shoot movies this engaging. I mean, other than the obviously more expensive cameras on the pretense that, a college kid couldn't afford to direct Meryl Streep, but
I don't remember much about the direction except I feel like there's enough of skipping through New York City scenes that are
yes,
you
quite a
know
few. There were
taking
some
on his
interesting transitions.
yeah.
There
But
was one
every New York movie has that, I guess,
where they
skyscrapers and skipping through New York City and all that stuff. But
there was one sequence I thought was kind of interesting in the middle. It was right after Anne Hathaway's character finally starts trying to get all fancy schmancy and putting on like the fancy clothes, and it's just this like compo this like it's almost like a montage of just random shots of her walking to
yeah,
work different outfits, and they use the environment to sort of cut between shots, which I thought was kind of interesting.
yeah, I think that's a pretty typical fashion runway music video type scene. But yeah. All
Yeah.
right. What else was good or bad?
I think there was a lot that left me sort of questioning throughout the film, but by the end of it, I think it all sort of started to make sense where sort of you see through most of the movie, you see this pretty cruel work environment. Like this is a very nasty, like just sadistic almost work environment with Meryl Streep's character as like the big nasty editor who's
Hmm.
everyone is both envies and is terrified of.
That's all right.
And you see Anne Hathaway's character become a pretty normal kind of person who sort of progressively becomes one of these stuck-up clowns. And the thing that breaks her is when she realizes that her and Meryl Streep's characters are in fact not that different. And that's when she's sort of like, no, I don't want to be you. You're sad and miserable all the time. And I think this thing that's sort of interesting is that scene also sort of reveals at the very end that with Meryl Streep's character, you see that even the people at the top of this industry are victims. It's like no one is immune to the cruelty of this industry, not even the one oppressing them. And you sort of see that she's the way she is because she was treated the same way, because she still is treated the same way, despite her high status. And you see these people who are
Do you think workplaces like that exist?
in this economy, absolutely. In this world, they're probably worse. That's probably a tame depiction.
Yeah. Do you think we need people like Meryl Streep and her character at least in the world?
I want to say no. I don't think environments like that, not even in, especially not in that industry. It's like I don't think anybody needs to be that just crazy. But I think the thing that makes Meryl Streep's character, Miranda Priestley, stand out sort of as being a fictional character is that they attempt to humanize her at the end, which most people with her position and her power in real life probably do not have those redeeming qualities. So
Well, here's the thing I can tell you, it does exist. Her
I have
character
no doubt of
exists.
that. I have no doubt about that. I'm pretty sure
Yeah, I
she
mean,
is.
and I would tell you that while it seems there's no point to it, that it does drive performance. I've seen it. I have it now, even in my company now. At the highest levels, that's often the case that if you want to drive performance, you have to be demanding. Really, if you want to drive performance, you have to be demanding and you have to strive for perfection at the highest level.
Yeah.
Now, maybe there's other approaches, I suppose, but I don't know. I've seen it over and over again.
I think fear and basically taking over people's lives is not the best approach because maybe it demands loyalty for a while, but eventually it won't drive performance. Eventually it'll just push people away. It'll be this, it'll, at least that's what it should be. It seems like something that eventually people would crumble under the pressure and it would all fall apart.
They don't. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've seen where the right people rise to the top. So the people that crumble leave, and the people that stay do well. So there's some industries that need it. So Wall Street, maybe fashion, I don't know, but
I
yeah.
can't imagine the way they were talking about fashion about.
I don't think the story is necessarily that Anne Hathaway she's choosing not to have that life. I think the thing is when you encounter that in life, you can choose to have it or not have it. It's just that if you want to be at the highest levels, you're going to have to work on. You're going to have to work at that level. You're going to have to work in that kind of detail. You have to strive for that level of perfection. And if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. But then you're not going to get all the rewards either. So I
True,
thought
but
at the end when Anne Hathaway looks at Meryl Streep, it's that she recognizes the choice that Meryl Streep made, and Anne Hathaway has decided to take a different choice.
I
But
think,
Anne Hathaway is also not necessarily going to be the editor. So
yeah, I think sort of
I
the
think what'll be
interesting.
interesting in number two is if Anne Hathaway is the editor, whether she ends up having to take on the same personality um, as Meryl Streep.
Yeah. I think sort of the interesting thing is sort of showing that even if you make that choice, more often than not, it will end up consuming and destroying you. As you again, you see a bit with Meryl Streep's character at the end, she's lost herself. She feels like she's nothing. She is this big bad, terrible person that everyone knows she is, and that's what she has to be, and she has to sort of embrace that. And she
Yeah,
made she made her choice.
but for her, maybe it's fine. Maybe it's what she wants. I mean, so
Maybe, but
it
again,
definitely is all consuming. You can't go into those jobs and not be all consuming. So I've seen it again too, like partners at big law firms. If you want to be a partner at a big law firm, you got to put a lot of time in, and it takes a toll on your family. But the end result is you get to be paid a lot of money. So, everybody's got to make their choices.
yeah, I guess you just see the toll of that choice. Meryl Streep's character, she made that choice decades and decades ago, and now in the
Well,
present.
and for her, she gets to fly around on private jets. She gets to make a lot of decisions. She lives a high life. So it's hard to say whether that choice is right for her or not, but that was her choice. So
Again, like I have said though, it's sort of it feels like she's not entirely happy with her choice either. She just has to live with it at this point because she made it already. She can't back away anymore.
yeah, hard to say. I mean, she certainly took a toll on her family. So, but
Yeah.
all right. Anyway, so what rating would you give this movie?
Like a 7.5 out of 10. The weird direction wasn't enough to sort of take away from the more interesting sort of narrative. I mean, yeah, it was definitely had its comedic moments, but I also think it sort of was an interesting examination of both like corporations in general and that particular industry. And like I said, the toll it takes on everyone, people who are at the bottom realizing that this isn't the life for them, and the people who chose to rise to the top and what it does to their psyche afterwards.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. It's a good story. I think that's why everybody likes it. Good acting, I think for sure.
Yeah.
And
Just
if you ever seen the movie Wall Street, this is like the fashion version of Wall Street. But
I guess we'll see what they do with
you got
the.
to put that's gonna have to be on your next one of your next movies. Wall Street
We'll get to
classic.
it. We'll get to it in a couple weeks or something.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
I want
The
to,
next big movie.
before we review anything, I want to interject with a follow-up to last week's episode, a follow-up to something we discussed regarding the release schedule for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Ball Run and the sort of degree of uncertainty that there was there with Netflix deciding that they were going to just not communicate with us and just say that the next episode is coming in the fall, or not in the fall, in
Okay.
2026.
Did they
Um,
clear? Did they clear something up?
this morning they released a statement, and I'm just going to read it. I don't mind me, I have my phone pulled up right now, but I am going to read their statement. I don't entirely understand it, but I'm going to read it anyway. It says, and I quote, "Thank you all for the incredible support for Steel Ball Run JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The series is currently in production and will be available for everyone to enjoy. We are planning a split core release across the entire run of episodes. The next core, second stage, will begin streaming in fall 2026 on Netflix, with one new episode released each week. This release schedule is part of our original plan and reflects the wishes of the production committee." What that means, I could not tell you, but
Okay.
we've got a little
Well,
more narrow of a time frame. We know it's going to be in the fall, I guess, and it's going to not be like all of them at once. It's going to be an episode a week during the second core. I don't even know what that word is supposed to mean. So we're in a interesting status, but um I'll get back to y'all once I figure out what that's supposed to mean.
yeah, maybe we won't know until they come out, but all right.
Maybe not, but let's
At least
leave
I
it at
guess they're
that.
trying, but they're using a lot of jargon.
Yeah, an attempt was made, I guess,
All right, big movie of the weekend. This one did well at the box office, actually.
but not critically.
Yeah, not critically, but I made what $350 million, I think I saw.
In the first 2 days alone.
Crazy. Super Mario Galaxy movie. So tell me, how was it?
I'm sorry to all the Nintendo diehard fans who don't have functioning critical thinking skills, but this was just kind of a mess.
How so?
Um, so first and foremost, the plot is barely a thing. It's the story of this movie is an afterthought. It is
Hmm.
all look at the Nintendo thing you remember, and it's just a bunch of random Nintendo things. I have played a little bit of the original game that this is supposed to be an adaptation of. I didn't get very far because I was a dumb kid at the time, but everything I know about that game is what I do know is that this is not an adaptation of the game it says it's adapting. It calls itself the Super Mario Galaxy movie. It is not an adaptation of Super Mario Galaxy, first and foremost. Secondly, like I said, the story is an afterthought, and you can tell throughout the film. There is no real like interest in developing characters. I mean, there was a marginally interesting idea posed with Bowser and Bowser Jr., but they just forgot about it halfway through the movie and then just never addressed it again. Um, Fox McCloud from the Star Fox games, he's not even a Mario character. He's from the
Yeah.
Star Fox games. He's in this movie. He doesn't really,
Okay.
he's in it for like 15 minutes. He doesn't really do much, but he's there. They got Glenn Powell to voice him. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason he's in the movie is because Glenn Powell kept calling them to make a Star Fox movie, and instead of making a Star Fox movie, they shoehorned him in this one.
But that means they're gonna make a Star Fox movie.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe we'll see. He doesn't really do much though. They think of it this way. He's basically Han Solo in A New Hope, except without
Hmm.
the character arc. He literally just exists to be the pilot. He doesn't have any actual like character development beyond that. He's just they get him as a pilot to take him from point A to point B. He's not an active participant in the plot like whatsoever.
Okay.
Like he's just
Anything good from the movie? Was there some point or ending to the movie or no?
The general plot was another generic sort of rescue the princess plot, where Princess Rosalina from the Super Mario Galaxy game, voiced by Brie Larson of Captain Marvel fame,
Hmm.
um, she gets kidnapped by Bowser Jr. Again, doesn't real she's a major player in the game this is based on, but here she's just not really in the movie that much. But the whole
Hmm.
objective is we've got to rescue her from Bowser Jr. and we go on a whole bunch of random nonsensical side quests along the way. Um, Bowser redeems himself for the first half of the movie and then changes his mind in the back half, and then he gets melted. He gets his skin melted off. He gets falls in lava, and
There
now
was
he
a lot of famous actors in the movie, though, right?
the cast is kind of ridiculous, and you can tell that's where they put most of the budget. But you've
Yeah,
got Chris Pratt, who is about as untalented as he has been the last 5 years or so. He's not really good at much anymore. Charlie Day's Luigi, Anya Taylor-Joy is Princess Peach, Keegan-Michael Key is Toad, Donald Glover is Yoshi, which is so funny because he's pouring that one is really funny because you would not have guessed it was him if you
yeah.
didn't going into it was him. Like it just sounds like Yoshi. Uh,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, but Brie Larson's Rosalina, Jack Black is Bowser, Benny Safdie is Bowser Jr., Glenn Powell is Fox McCloud. Big cast that they don't really do much, and I think
Yeah,
that's sort of one of the big issues with these like big Illumination movies is they often just like to get big A-list celebrities to voice their characters, but voice acting is very different than like
yeah,
normal acting, and you sort of see it's very obvious. It's very, very, very obvious.
yeah.
These guys do not really. I mean, Jack Black is still kind of amusing. I think Glenn Powell and Brie Larson and Donald Glover are the only ones who really put effort into their performances. And again,
Hmm.
Fox doesn't really do anything. Rosalina is just the princess they have to rescue. She's not really in the movie. And Yoshi literally serves no point to the story. He's literally just there. Like he's in the movie the whole time. Like he has a lot of screen time. He doesn't really do much of anything that's like actually, and it's so funny because the end of the last movie there was a post-credit scene where they show like Yoshi's egg cracking, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a big part of the next movie. He's going to be a big
Right.
part. And
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
his involvement in the narrative again is that he's just there. Like they meet him like
Oh.
5 minutes into the movie, and then he just sort of sticks around. Like he doesn't do much of anything. Like I said, he's just there. He's just there for
Well,
the sake of being there.
well,
It's quite funny.
Frankie and his friends saw the movie as well, and yeah, I picked them up and asked them how it was, and they said it was kind of boring. So,
Yeah, adds up. It was
but
when
apparently a lot of people went to go see it. I don't know, must not be much in the theater.
no, when they release some generic kids movie based on a popular IP, it tends to make money. Minecraft, Lilo and Stitch
Mhm.
last year, neither of those were very good either, but they made a butt ton of money because they know how to appeal to a certain younger demographic, and parents will take their kids to these silly, dumb kiddie movies just to shut them up for a few hours.
So, what was your rating of the movie?
I gave it a 5 out of 10, and that was mostly because the animation looked a lot better than usual for this particular studio. I hate this studio. I despise. I can't stand Illumination. I don't.
Hmm.
They do the Minions movies, and that sort of tells you everything you need to know about their idea of quality. But
Yeah. All right. Well, we had three movie reviews, kind of a bust. Devil's Wears Prada was the best movie.
that
So,
is true. Well, that's the only one that actually tried to do something interesting. The other two is generic military propaganda, and how many times can Nintendo fanboys point and scream at the screen?
there you go. All right, let's keep going then. Let's move on to Star Wars time.
We've been hyping this up for quite some time now. So
Yes,
the
first two
day's here.
episodes came out.
This morning, yep.
And did you watch them first thing?
Of course I watched them first thing. I'm too committed to this franchise.
Yeah.
Alarmingly, but
Well, tell me, how'd it go?
we're off to a solid start. I've got a
Okay.
lot to say about this, even though I don't think there was too much there's not too much going on in these episodes, the first two, but there's a lot I think I can say about them.
Give me the general plot of what's going on.
So frankly, it seems to be pretty much exactly what the marketing promised. Maul is trying to rebuild and restore his criminal syndicate on this independent world Desix, where and the local law enforcement which we're actually following local law enforcement more than Maul himself. It's
Hmm.
sort of we're presenting it less so from Maul's perspective yet. We're starting it from the perspective of the people that fear him.
Okay.
And right now we're following police, I want to say Captain Brender Lawson. He is voiced by, again, our Academy Award nominee Wagner Moura from The
Hmm.
Secret Agent. He also voiced Death in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish a couple years ago, which got a lot of attention. So I
All
find
right.
his characters kind of interesting because we have like a genuinely morally like this law enforcement character in the Age of the Empire who's not corrupt or has a twisted idea of justice. I mean, he is genuinely wants to do the right thing, and he is very wary of the Empire too. There's been several times where it's like, this is a high profile target. I mean, we should call the Empire. And he's like, no, do not get them involved. This is
Hmm.
we're going to deal with this. We know from the marketing and from like the Inquisitors showing up later in the trailers, we know that the Empire is going to show up probably by the end of next week's batch, but
Okay.
I'm kind of
So what'd you like so far? How was the direction, the filming?
it's animated, so I can't really talk about filming, but
Yeah.
the
Okay.
thing about it is it's very obviously an evolution of the Clone Wars art style, but it's channeling something more akin to the Spider-Verse films or Arcane with a mix between 3D animation, like computer generated animation, and 2D animation and like hand drawn, hand painted backgrounds.
Hmm.
You can just particularly tell with the lightsabers. The lightsabers are so like that's the best they've looked in any animated project. They look insane.
Hmm.
Um, I like some of the action sequences, although they do feel kind of sporadic here.
Okay.
The one thing that's I'm a little underwhelmed right now, mostly because I really wanted this show to get into Maul's head. This is someone
All right.
who's we haven't gotten into his head, and that's what I really want to see. We mean we've got 8 episodes left, so we've got time, but right now,
Yeah.
my biggest disappointment is I really want to know more about how he thinks and why he thinks it. Because
Did,
obvious,
have they shown Maul yet?
of course, they've shown Maul. It's 2 episodes into the. If they hadn't shown Maul 2 episodes into his own show, I'd be very concerned.
Hmm.
Like if that would be worse than the Boba Fett show, cutting Boba Fett out of the show for 2 straight weeks. But if they
So
didn't.
what is Maul up to so far?
Right now, he's trying to lurk in the shadows. At the moment, I don't think his plans are too grandiose. I mean, eventually he wants to get strong enough to take on Palpatine again. But
Hmm.
right now, he's trying to sort of reforge his criminal coalition, the Shadow Collective.
Yeah.
One of the gang member, or a couple of the gang lords. There was one gang lord who, or crime lord who betrayed his agreement or his oath to Maul's Shadow Collective,
Hmm.
and so Maul sets up a heist to frame a different mob boss to draw them into an encounter with one another, hoping
Hmm.
that the one would kill the other.
Yeah.
But it did not go as planned, and the one he wanted dead ended up killing the one he didn't want dead. So he has to go break the one he wants dead out of jail so he can kill him himself until he makes a deal but he makes a deal with him so Maul doesn't like slice his head off. And he's straight up like, okay, so I know where this one Pike boss is, this Pike boss who's also betrayed you. Please don't kill me. And so we're leading up to that, but I don't think he's intercepted a Pike shipment so far, but he hasn't actually
Okay.
encountered that Pike boss he's supposed to like kill. But he also wants an apprentice. He wants someone, or as he phrased it, a weapon. Uh,
Right.
there's these two Jedi hiding out on this planet, a master and his Padawan. The Padawan gets arrested for petty theft and he breaks her out too. And he's like, you and I, we could fight together. We could be on the same side. And she's like,
Hmm.
no, I know who you are. That's not going to work. And he's like, well, reconsider it.
Okay.
That hasn't really gone anywhere yet. But
All
again,
right.
there's
So strong start so far.
solid start. I again have my gripes. The pacing is really weird too. It just feels like it's almost too fast. It's both too slow and too fast at the same time. I'm not going to try to explain that because it'll somehow make less sense, but
Yeah. Okay.
I think the main thing I want to really mention about it is one thing they talked about when the show started its marketing campaign
Hmm.
is they said the showrunners, I don't remember who said this, but someone in the show running department said that this show would be more episodic, more linear with its
Okay.
narrative, as opposed to something like Bad Batch or Clone Wars or Rebels, where it's more serialized, where you've got
Okay.
like your story, where you've got a bunch of episodes that are just adventure of the week. This is more one single narrative through line, which for me I thought could be really good, but also could be really bad. It depends on how they handled it. Right now, I
Hmm.
think we're firmly in the okay category, where I'm at a point where I don't necessarily think half of the things we've seen have to be nearly this long
Right.
because I don't think we've learned. Like, I'm all for a slow burn. I'm all for slowly learning things, but I feel like there's too much where we don't learn anything about the world or the characters
Hmm.
that it doesn't entirely justify the way it's paced yet. So
Yeah.
we'll see. This is obviously going to escalate a lot. It's going to draw, we know from trailers that this is going to draw the attention of the Empire, that they're
Hmm.
going to end up sending Inquisitors, and that this is going to escalate into something far more than a little underworld investigation. This is going to be a full-on war zone by the end of this season,
Okay.
which I do want to briefly touch on. There were a couple leaks, a couple things that surfaced online that should not
Yep.
have surfaced online. I'm not. I'm going to put a humongous spoiler warning here because this could be some big stuff for the remainder of the season, which we were a little skeptical on the validity of, but it has since been verified. A bunch of character posters surfaced. When they do Star Wars shows, just in general, they like to have character posters to focus on like new characters introduced in that week's episode, or like new
Hmm.
things happening in that week's episode or episodes. So they were going to release 2 to 3 character posters a week up
Right.
until the finale.
Hmm.
Um, every single character poster for the entire series leaked
Oh
online
boy.
last week, and we were again skeptical on the validity of it until they posted a couple posters this morning, and they were the same posters from last
Mm.
week's leak
Got
for
it.
this week's episode. And we've got a couple from later in the season that spoil some pretty big character appearances.
Hmm.
Firstly, we're going to mention Dryden Voss, who everyone kind of figured was going to show up. He was the main villain in the Han Solo movie, and he was sort of Maul's right-hand man as the public figurehead of the Crimson Dawn Syndicate, which presumably at that point in time is the only syndicate in Maul's Shadow Collective that still follows his orders. But
Okay.
Dryden, he was played by Paul Bettany in the film. We do not know if he will reprise the role in the
Mm.
animated series. He's done voice work for some of the Marvel animated shows, so I wouldn't be surprised if they can get him back.
Hmm.
But the second character poster, and skip ahead like 5 minutes if you don't want to know who this is for people watching and listening to this. This is a huge reveal, and you might be able to figure it out from the marketing, but we've got one of the character posters that's not meant to be released until after the season ends, and it depicts Darth Vader.
Oh boy.
Darth Vader is going to appear in this show in some capacity, which I did speculate. I didn't talk about it in the episode, but they released a TV spot right after we recorded last week's episode that depicted the Inquisitor Merrick talking to a hologram. We couldn't see the hologram in frame, but he says, "My lord, Maul lives." And that could have been interpreted several ways, but there's a grand total of like 2 characters an Inquisitor might refer to as my lord, and the Grand
Hmm.
Inquisitor is not one of them. So it was like it's either Vader or Palpatine. Glad we have confirmation, but
So
that
do
is
we think that means he's coming in this 10 episodes or in another season?
um I'm he will almost definitely be in this season. I don't expect a big role from him. Maybe shows up at the end to fight Maul. Maybe he only shows up at the end to tease the next season. I'm
Hmm.
not entirely sure what his role will be, but
Okay.
the Inquisitors that are fighting Maul are going to have to be defeated. but not killed. He can't kill them because we've seen how both of these Inquisitors die in
Mm,
other media. Because the two Inquisitors depicted in this show are Merrick, aka the First Brother, who was originally in the Ahsoka live action show, which,
hmm
interestingly enough, that takes place like 30 years after this show. So he's going to be alive for a while, but Ahsoka kills him in that show.
mm,
And the other Inquisitor got an he's marketed as the Crow, but his designation is the 11th brother. He
hmm
was voiced by Clancy Brown when he appeared in the Tales of the Jedi animated miniseries a couple years ago.
hmm
Surprise, surprise, Ahsoka killed him too. So both of the Inquisitors fighting Maul are Inquisitors that Ahsoka killed. Unfortunately,
They
that
gotta last a while, but yeah.
well, not no, not so much 11th brother. His death in universe probably happened like a couple months after this, but
Mm,
first brother, he's got to last another 30 years. He's got a lot of time. Although there are speculations that he may have been zombified in some way by
mm,
Night Sister magic in the Ahsoka show due to after being slashed in the abdomen, he sort of a bunch of like green magic dust that sort of matches the Night Sister aesthetic emerges from him, and the Night Sisters of Dathomir have a knack for sort of reviving people from the dead and turning them into zombies with their magic. So there's a possibility he might have already been dead before his final fight with Ahsoka. There's a possibility he could have been dead 30 years earlier. So I wouldn't be
yeah.
surprised if Maul does in fact kill him and he was already dead when we
But then
saw him in
then it
this.
becomes zombified.
Yes. We'll see. We'll
Okay.
see how that plays out. I'm kind of curious.
Do
Uh,
we have news about season two?
yes, as a matter of fact, last week we speculated on it a little bit, but Wednesday last week, the show had not even premiered yet. Season two has been officially greenlit behind the scenes. So we know
How do
that
you get that news? Where's that? That was officially noted somewhere, or how do you find that out?
they posted it on StarWars.com after Dave Filoni mentioned in an interview doing press for the show that they were working on it. They officially
Hmm
greenlit it on the official Star Wars site.
Okay,
My
that's good to
biggest
know.
concern right now is I'm terrified as to what they're going to do with Darth Vader's voice. James Earl Jones is obviously gone.
Yeah, so you're worried about AI with it, or you, or
I am worried about AI because James Earl Jones and his
he
estate
signed off on the fact on letting them do it.
exactly, which, at least they have his approval, but they have voice doubles for him on like speed dial. Scott Lawrence and Matt Sloan have commonly done Darth Vader's voice in video games and
Right.
some of the like Lego specials. Like Matt Sloan recently voiced him in Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, and
hmm
Scott Lawrence has voiced him in a lot of the recent video games. So Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, Vader Immortal, Squadrons, Outlaws. The most recent of which Outlaws was not even 2 full years ago. They've got the guy on speed dial. I really hope they take advantage of the actual human beings they have that have proven capable of recreating to
hmm
the best of their ability James Earl Jones's voice instead of relying on the AI, which I know they have his permission to do, doesn't mean I have to like it.
Right. Yeah,
I,
I'll be
I
curious to
don't
see.
I don't like the usage of AI in creative fields whatsoever. I think it has absolutely no place near anything like this, especially a show like this, which is so focused on sort of its art style and its visual
hmm
identity. And it's like if they like throw all that effort, and it's like we've got all this effort to visually create these worlds hand drawn by human beings,
Yep.
and then you've got an AI voicing Darth Vader. Like, no, I'm sorry, I just don't like that idea. That's
Mm.
repulsive to me.
All right. Well, we may find out later this season, I guess.
Either later this season or next season if it's not a speaking role this season, but we'll see.
Right, right,
I
right.
assume he'll have a speaking role considering he's evidently in it enough to have a character poster. So,
All right. Well, what else want to say about Maul? I know we're gonna go to we'll see three and four next week, but
that's all I
well,
really have to say now. Our start
okay.
right now has left me with more questions than answers, which again, fair enough. We've got 8 more episodes. I hope they don't answer everything this early, but
Right, exactly. They're purposely creating the questions. So All right. Well, that was good for Star Wars time. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. Next week, we're doing a movie review of the drama. Have you
Which
seen it yet?
yes, that's why I was so rushing to get back. I had a 4 o'clock screening today.
Okay. And then we got Godfather 3. We'll spend some time on. That'll be cool. And
So
then yeah, we'll
specifically, The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which is Francis Ford Coppola's 2020 re-edit of the film, which is more in line with his original vision before studio interference got in his way.
yeah, sounds good.
We'll watch that version instead of the theatrical cut.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good. Well,
Plus,
enjoy your week back at school there, Nick. So
enjoy. I'm
you
going
only
to be
got a few more
miserable,
weeks. Semester's almost over. So
and it's going to feel like a nightmare to get there. Those weeks are going to feel like eternities.
yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Yep.
Oh, wait, we
Let's.
have to. That's not how we end it.
That is not how we ended. No.
How do we end it?
How do we? Oh, yeah. Three. No. Yeah, that's a wrap. There we go.
That's all right.
That's a
Okay,
wrap.
that sounds
And
better.
hi.